The evening sun was setting as Agent Lee walked into Fresh Mart, hoping to grab some quick groceries after a long day at work. She hadn't planned on stopping, but her fridge was as empty as her energy levels. The automatic doors whooshed open, bringing a blast of cool air that was a nice change from the summer heat outside. Lee was good at her job, really good. 15 years in the field had taught her how to blend in perfectly. Today, she looked like any other tired office worker in her simple blue blouse and black pants. Nobody would guess she'd spent the morning preventing an international crisis. Right now, all she wanted was some instant noodles and maybe those cookies she loved. The store was pretty quiet for a Thursday evening. A few people were picking up last-minute dinner ingredients, and somewhere in the distance, a child was asking their mom for candy. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Lee grabbed a shopping basket and headed toward the snack aisle. The normalcy of it all was almost funny. Just hours ago, she'd been decoding encrypted messages that could have changed the course of history. She was checking the expiration date on a pack of cookies when she first noticed something was off. You know that feeling when someone's watching you? Well, Lee had that feeling times 10. She'd learned to trust these instincts. They'd saved her life more than once. Pretending to be super interested in the cookie ingredients, Lee used the shiny metal shelf trim to look behind her. That's when she spotted her. A woman in an expensive-looking floral dress and pearl necklace staring at her like she was some kind of criminal. The woman wasn't even trying to hide it, standing there with her designer purse clutched tight against her chest, lips pressed into a thin line. Lee grabbed her cookies and moved to the next aisle. The woman followed, not even pretending to shop anymore. Then it started, the loud whispers that were meant to be heard. "I don't know why they let these people shop here." The woman's voice carried through the aisle like she was using a megaphone. Someone should really keep an eye on them. A younger shopper nearby looked uncomfortable and quickly walked away. An elderly man shook his head disapprovingly, though Lee wasn't sure if it was at her or the woman's behavior. She kept shopping, adding some instant noodles to her basket. Years of training had taught her how to keep her cool in the worst situations. This was annoying, sure, but she dealt with international arms dealers. Some prejudiced shopper wasn't going to rattle her. But something wasn't adding up. The woman's designer outfit was perfect, too perfect. Her pearl necklace caught the fluorescent lights in a way that seemed carefully planned. Even her loud complaints felt rehearsed, like she was performing for an audience. After years of spotting undercover operatives, Lee was getting that familiar tingle at the base of her neck, the one that said this was more than just a simple case of everyday racism. Lee pretended to check her shopping list, using her phone's screen to observe the store's entrance. That's when she saw them, 3 men walking in, looking casual in a way that wasn't casual at all. To most people, they'd look like normal shoppers. But Lee noticed how they spread out with too much precision, how their eyes scanned the store with too much purpose. The woman's voice got louder, drawing more attention. "Manager. I need to speak to the manager right now." People were starting to pull out their phones, probably thinking this would be the next viral Karen video. And that's when it clicked. This woman wasn't just being racist. She was creating the perfect distraction, making sure all eyes and cameras were focused on this manufactured drama. The question was, what were they trying to distract everyone from? The woman in the designer dress wasn't letting up. If anything, she was getting louder, making sure everyone in Fresh Mart could hear her ridiculous accusations. Agent Lee kept her face neutral as she picked up a box of tea, but her mind was racing. Something bigger was happening here, and she needed to figure out what before it was too late. "Excuse me, this woman hasn't paid for those items in her basket." The woman's voice echoed through the store. A teenager stocking shelves nearby almost dropped a can of soup, startled by the sudden outburst. "I've been watching her, and she's acting very suspicious." Lee had to admit it was clever. In today's world, nothing drew attention like a racist confrontation in a store. Already, at least 5 people had their phones out, recording everything. One young woman in workout clothes was shaking her head and muttering, "Not another Karen," under her breath. The scene was playing out exactly how these videos usually did, and that was the problem. It felt too perfect, too staged. Through the security mirror at the end of the aisle, Lee tracked the 3 men who'd entered earlier. They were good, moving casually, never staying in one spot too long. but they were definitely coordinating their movements, slowly making their way toward the back of the store. She needed to warn her team, but with all these phones recording, she couldn't risk breaking her cover. "I demand to see your receipt." The woman was getting closer now, her expensive heels clicking against the tile floor. The pearl necklace caught the light again, and Lee noticed something interesting. The clasp was military grade, the kind that could quick release with one touch. Definitely not standard jewelry store fare. Lee turned to face her, keeping her voice steady and calm. "Ma'am, I haven't checked out yet. I'm still shopping." Simple words, the kind anyone would use. Around them, more customers were gathering, drawn to the drama like moths to a flame. Perfect cover for whatever operation was really going down. "Don't you ma'am me?" The woman's face was red with fake outrage. "I know your type. Always causing trouble." She was playing her role perfectly, every word carefully chosen to be as inflammatory as possible without crossing any lines that would get the videos taken down from social media. Through the store windows, Lee spotted a white van pulling up to the loading dock. Wrong time of day for deliveries. Her instincts were screaming now. She needed to act, but she had to be smart about it. One wrong move, and whatever was really happening would slip right through her fingers. The store manager finally appeared, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was young, probably his first management job, and his name tag read Mike. The poor guy was already sweating, clearly not prepared for this kind of situation. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, trying to sound authoritative, but his voice cracked slightly. The woman launched into her practiced speech about suspicious behavior and store security, but Lee was focused on something else. One of the three men had just slipped through the employees-only door near the pharmacy. Nobody else noticed. They were all too busy watching this staged drama unfold. Lee did some quick math in her head. The pharmacy. The unusual delivery van. The coordinated team. Something valuable had come in today's shipment, something that wasn't supposed to be here. And these people were using America's racial tensions as the perfect smokescreen to steal it. Her fingers itched to reach for her phone to alert her backup team, but she had to time this perfectly. Too soon, and the whole operation would scatter. Too late, and whatever they were after would be gone. For now, she had to play her part, the unfairly accused shopper in what everyone thought would be tomorrow's viral video. Little did they know, this Karen incident was about to take a very unexpected turn. Mike the manager stood between Lee and the well-dressed woman, looking like he'd rather be swallowed up by the floor tiles beneath his feet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as a small crowd watched the drama unfold, phones still recording every second. "Ma'am," Mike said, turning to the woman in the designer dress, "perhaps we could discuss this in my office." His voice was shaking slightly. Poor guy probably hadn't covered this scenario in management training. "Absolutely not." The woman's voice bounced off the shelves. "I want everyone to see how this store handles security issues." She jabbed a manicured finger in Lee's direction. "This person has been acting suspiciously since the moment she walked in." Lee watched the woman's performance while pretending to look embarrassed. The woman was good, really good. Every gesture was calculated to draw attention, but not in an obvious way. The way she shifted her weight, how she positioned herself so cameras could catch her best angle, even how she modulated her voice to carry through the store, this was professional-level stuff. Through the pharmacy windows, Lee caught glimpses of movement. The men who'd entered earlier were definitely up to something back there. She needed to buy time, figure out their plan. Thankfully, years of undercover work had taught her a thing or two about playing a role. "I'm just trying to buy some groceries," Lee said quietly, letting her voice crack just a bit. Several onlookers nodded sympathetically. A middle-aged man in a plaid shirt stepped forward. "Hey now, this is ridiculous," he said, addressing the woman. "You can't just harass people like this." Perfect. More drama meant more distraction. The woman spun toward him, pearls swinging. "Stay out of this. I'm a paying customer, and I have concerns about store security." But Lee noticed something interesting. The woman's eyes kept darting to her designer watch. She was timing something. Mike was sweating more now, looking between Lee, the angry woman, and the growing crowd. "Please, everyone just calm down. We don't want." "Calm down." The woman's voice hit a new pitch, when someone is clearly. She stopped mid-sentence, head tilting slightly. Lee caught it, the tiny movement of her hand to her ear. An earpiece. This woman was getting updates from someone. That's when Lee saw it through the pharmacy window. One of the men was accessing the secure storage area. But why? What could be so valuable in a regular grocery store pharmacy that would warrant this elaborate distraction? Then she remembered a memo from last week. Several shipments of restricted chemicals had been misrouted due to a computer error. Chemicals that, in the wrong hands, could be turned into something devastating. One of those shipments was supposed to have been rerouted today, but if it wasn't, the woman checked her watch again, then escalated her performance. "I want to speak to your corporate office. This is completely unacceptable." She pulled out her phone, making a show of dialing numbers. Lee had to make a choice. Her backup team was just a text away, but if these people realized they'd been made, things could get ugly fast. The store was full of innocent people just trying to buy their dinner. One wrong move could turn this staged drama into something much worse. That's when Lee noticed something else, the way the woman kept her designer bag slightly open, angled away from the crowd. The glimpse of metal inside wasn't a makeup compact. This Karen was armed, ready for things to go wrong. Time was running out. In the pharmacy, the men were almost done with whatever they were doing. The woman's performance was reaching its peak, perfectly timed to cover their escape. Lee needed to act, but she had to be smart about it. One wrong move, and this carefully orchestrated scene could explode into chaos. Lee's mind raced as she watched everything unfold like a perfectly choreographed dance. The woman in the designer dress was still putting on her show, but now Lee could see all the little signs she'd missed at first. The way she kept the crowd positioned just right, how she timed her outbursts to cover any noise from the pharmacy area, even how she kept everyone's backs to the store's rear exit. Through the pharmacy window, Lee caught another glimpse of movement. The three men were working quickly, methodically. They weren't just grabbing things randomly. They knew exactly what they were looking for. That confirmed her suspicions about the misrouted chemical shipment. "I've never been so insulted in my life." The woman's voice cracked with fake emotion. She turned to the crowd, playing to her audience. "Can you believe this? In this day and age?" More phones came out, more people gathering to record what they thought would be tomorrow's viral video. Lee pretended to shrink back, playing the role of the embarrassed victim, but her eyes never stopped moving. The white van outside had repositioned slightly, backing up to the loading dock. The driver was still in the cab, engine running. 4 minutes tops before they'd be ready to move. A young woman in the crowd stepped forward, putting herself between Lee and the angry woman. "This is not okay," she said firmly. "You need to stop harassing people." Others nodded in agreement. The crowd was getting angry, just as planned. Nothing united strangers like standing up to obvious racism. But Lee noticed something else, how this confrontation had cleared everyone away from the store's back area. Not a single customer or employee had a clear view of the pharmacy now. The woman was better at crowd control than most police officers Lee had worked with. Mike, the manager, was on his phone now, supposedly calling corporate. His hands were shaking as he dialed, and Lee caught the woman's tiny smirk. She knew the poor guy was too flustered to think straight, too worried about handling the situation right to notice what was really happening. That's when Lee saw it. The reflection in the security mirror showed one of the men slipping something into a regular shopping bag. Just a quick glimpse, but it was enough. The package size matched the description from last week's memo perfectly. They had what they came for. The woman must have gotten some signal because she suddenly changed tactics. Fine, I'm calling the police." She fumbled with her phone, making a big show of dialing. More drama, more distraction, but Lee saw her press the screen in a pattern that definitely wasn't a phone number. Now they were in the endgame. The men would be moving soon, using all this chaos as cover. The woman would make her exit during the confusion, probably through the front while everyone was focused on the back. It was smart, really smart. By tomorrow, this would just be another viral video of a racist incident at a store. No one would connect it to anything bigger. Lee felt her own phone buzz in her pocket. Her team was in position outside, waiting for her signal. But timing would be everything. Move too soon, and these people might get desperate. In a store full of innocent bystanders, desperate professionals with weapons were the last thing she needed. The woman's designer bag was still angled away from the crowd, ready for quick access. The pearl necklace with its quick-release catch glinted under the fluorescent lights. One wrong move, and those pearls would probably turn out to be something much more dangerous than jewelry. Lee had to make her play soon. The men would be heading for the exit any minute now. But first, she needed to make sure the crowd would be safe when everything went down. Because this perfectly orchestrated scene was about to turn into something very different from the viral video everyone was expecting. Everything happened at once. The pharmacy door swung open, and one of the men walked out casually, shopping bag in hand like any normal customer. The woman in the designer dress was reaching peak performance, her voice hitting notes that made everyone wince. Through the store windows, Lee saw the white van's engine was still running, ready for a quick getaway. Time to move. Lee reached into her pocket, pretending to check her phone. 3 quick taps sent a coded signal to her team outside. Within seconds, unmarked cars would be quietly blocking every exit. Now she just had to keep everything contained without endangering the civilians filming what they thought would be their next viral video. You know what? Lee spoke up, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. Let's all calm down and wait for the police. She saw the tiny flash of worry cross the woman's face, not part of the plan. The woman's hand twitched toward her bag, but Lee continued, "In fact, I think they're already here." The woman's eyes darted to the store windows. Lee could practically see her mind racing, recalculating. The man with the shopping bag slowed his walk, probably getting instructions through his earpiece. The other 2 were still in the pharmacy, likely trying to figure out their next move. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to stay here," the woman announced, but her practice turn was slipping. She took a step toward the exit, then froze. Through the glass doors, they could all see several cars pulling up outside. Not police cars, just regular vehicles, but the woman knew exactly what they meant. Lee kept her voice calm, speaking to the crowd now. "Everyone, I think we should give the store manager some space to handle this situation. Maybe we could all move toward the front registers," herding the civilians away from what was about to happen. The woman's designer bag snapped open. "Nobody move," she shouted, but Lee was already in motion. Before anyone could blink, she closed the distance between them. The crowd gasped as Lee grabbed the woman's wrist, twisting just enough to make her drop what was definitely not a makeup compact. "Everyone stay calm and move toward the exits," Lee called out, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. "Store security will handle this." The crowd started backing away, phones still recording but from a safer distance. The man with the shopping bag made a break for the back door, but it burst open before he reached it. 2 people in casual clothes, Lee's backup team, were there to greet him. The other 2 men emerged from the pharmacy, saw the situation, and wisely decided to surrender. The woman struggled in Lee's grip, her perfect Karen act completely forgotten. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," she hissed, dropping the fake accent she'd been using. "Actually," Lee replied quietly, "I think you're the ones who didn't know what you were dealing with. Those chemicals you're after, they were moved yesterday. This was a setup." The woman's face went pale as she realized their perfect plan, using social media culture and racism as cover, had been anticipated. The store was suddenly full of agents who looked just like regular shoppers, calmly securing the scene while confused customers were safely escorted outside. Mike, the manager, stood there, mouth open, as one of Lee's colleagues quietly explained the situation to him. The would-be thieves were quickly and quietly taken into custody, the whole thing handled so smoothly that most of the customers probably thought it was just another shoplifting incident. Tomorrow, there would be no viral video, no social media outrage. Just another quiet win in an endless shadow war that most people never even knew was being fought. And somewhere, in a secure facility, a shipment of dangerous chemicals would stay safely out of the wrong hands. The next few minutes were like a perfectly choreographed dance. Lee's team moved through the store with practiced efficiency, looking just like regular shoppers until the moment they needed to act. The 3 men from the pharmacy were quickly and quietly secured, their shopping bag of stolen chemicals safely recovered. The woman who'd played the Karen role sat in Mike's office, her designer dress not quite so perfect anymore, her pearls confiscated after they turned out to be a high-tech communication device. The look on her face when she realized she'd been outsmarted was almost worth all the drama she'd caused. You know, Lee said, sitting across from her, it was actually a clever plan, using social media culture against us, making everyone so focused on filming the next viral racism video that they didn't see what was really happening. She paused, watching the woman's face. But you made one mistake. The woman glared back, her fake accent completely gone now. And what was that? You were too perfect, Lee replied. Real racist incidents are messy, ugly, raw. Yours was like a performed piece of theater. Every word calculated, every gesture planned. The moment I saw you check your watch the third time, I knew this was a professional operation. Outside the office, Lee could hear her team wrapping things up. The store's regular customers had been escorted out, each one interviewed briefly to make sure no actual video of the incident would make it online. National security could be funny that way. Sometimes the best victories were the ones that nobody ever heard about. Mike, the manager, sat in the corner, still trying to process everything that had happened in his store. One of Lee's colleagues was explaining things to him, helping him understand how to handle any questions that might come up. Poor guy had thought he was dealing with a racist customer incident, only to find himself in the middle of an international security operation. The chemicals, the woman said suddenly, breaking into Lee's thoughts. They weren't even here, were they? You knew we were coming. Lee allowed herself a small smile. Let's just say we've been watching your group for a while. When we saw the shipping manifest error, we knew you'd try something. Though I have to admit, using social media trends as cover, that was new. Through the office window, Lee could see the store returning to normal. The would-be thieves were being quietly escorted out through the back, no sirens or marked cars to draw attention. By tomorrow, this would just be another day at Fresh Mart, with maybe a few customers wondering whatever happened to that viral video they thought they were going to be in. You don't understand what you're interfering with, the woman said, but her voice had lost its edge. She knew it was over. Actually, I do, Lee replied calmly. Those chemicals you were after. In the right hands, they'd used to make life-saving medications. In the wrong hands. She let the sentence hang there. We know exactly what your group was planning. One of Lee's colleagues knocked on the office door, time to move their prisoners to a more secure location. As the woman was led away, she turned back to Lee. You know there will be others, right? Different plans, different approaches. I'm counting on it, Lee said simply, and we'll be ready for those too. The store was almost empty now, just a few team members doing final sweeps. Mike was slumped in his chair, looking exhausted but relieved. Lee walked over to him. You did good, she told him. Kept your cool, played along without even knowing you were playing. Not everyone could have handled that so well. Mike managed a weak smile. I can't believe it was all fake. The racist stuff, the drama. They used real problems as a cover for something so terrible. That's often how it works, Lee said softly. The best covers play on real issues, real emotions. Makes it harder to spot what's really going on, she paused. But that's also why we can't let them succeed. The sun had set by the time everything was wrapped up at Fresh Mart. The store's fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the now empty aisles as Lee did one final walkthrough. It was hard to believe that just hours ago, this quiet space had been the stage for such an elaborate operation. In the manager's office, Mike was finishing up his modified incident report, the official story that would go into the store's records. No mention of secret agents or dangerous chemicals, just a simple customer complaint that had been resolved peacefully. Sometimes the best way to keep a secret was to make it boring. Still can't believe none of those videos will end up online, Mike said, shaking his head as he signed the papers. I mean, everyone had their phones out. Lee smiled. Technology works both ways. Right now, every person who tried to upload footage of the incident is getting error messages. By tomorrow, most of them will have forgotten they even tried to post anything. Outside, the last unmarked van was pulling away, carrying the would-be thieves to a secure facility for questioning. The woman in the designer dress would have a lot to explain about her organization's plans for those chemicals, but that was someone else's job now. Lee's phone buzzed, a message from headquarters. The team had finished searching the white van and found detailed plans for similar operations at other stores. The racist Karen distraction technique had been meant to be their new signature move, using social media's hunger for outrage to cover their tracks. You know what's funny? Lee said, turning to Mike. In trying to use racism as a cover, they'd actually showed why it's so important to stay alert to the real thing. They knew their plan would work because these incidents happened for real all the time. Mike nodded slowly. Yeah, that's the part that gets me. They took something that causes real pain to real people and tried to use it as a smokescreen for something even worse. He paused, then managed a small smile. At least this time, the good guys won. Lee gathered her things. Her actual grocery shopping would have to wait for another day. As she headed for the door, Mike called after her. Henny, thank you for keeping everyone safe and for explaining things to me. I know you probably didn't have to do that. Actually, I did, Lee replied. Because tomorrow, this store opens again. And maybe next time something happens, something real, you'll be better prepared to handle it. That's how we make things better, one small moment at a time. Outside, the evening air was cool and fresh after hours under fluorescent lights. Lee took a moment to look back at the store. From out here, you'd never know what had happened inside. Just another grocery store on just another street in just another town. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from headquarters. They'd finished analyzing the chemicals found in the pharmacy. If those had made it into the wrong hands, Lee pushed the thought away. That's why they did this job, to stop the bad things before they could happen, to fight the battles that most people would never know about. Tomorrow, somewhere else, another group would try something similar. Maybe they'd use a different distraction, a different cover story. But Lee and her team would be ready, because that's what they did. Stayed ready, stayed alert, and kept watching for the real threats hiding behind fake drama. As she walked to her car, Lee couldn't help but smile at the irony. The bad guys had tried to use people's worst instincts, their willingness to film and share moments of conflict and prejudice, as cover for their scheme. Instead, they'd ended up proving why it was so important to look deeper, to question what we see, and to remember that sometimes the real story is happening just out of frame. Her car beeped as she unlocked it. Time to go home, file her report, and get ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. After all, in her line of work, you never knew when a simple trip to the grocery store might turn into something much more interesting. And somewhere, in a secure facility, a group of would-be thieves was learning a valuable lesson. Sometimes the person you're trying to distract turns out to be the very person you should have been watching out for.